Hey, welcome to the shop. In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to make two essential tools that you'll use as a beginner woodworker. The first one is a push stick. So I'm going to teach you guys how to make a simple push stick out of one piece of wood. This is an essential tool as a beginner woodworker, most importantly for safety. This is a push stick that I made before. It's seen better days, so it's time to upgrade. So as you can see, I drew out the push stick on a piece of paper so that it can be printed on a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and that way you can use this or you can draw your own. What's important is it's just based off of a triangle. The dimensions are 10 inches long by 5 inches tall. Right now I'm working on the handle part. I had to measure my finger width to make sure I get the right size so my fingers will fit into the handle. You for sure will have to adjust this to whatever size you need, but this is a great starting point. This is the beginning of a template, so now I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut it really kind of loose at first, just to get the sheet out of the notebook. Get out of here. It's like arts and crafts, or like my grandpa used to say, farts and craps. I miss him. I'm pretty sure he's the reason why I'm a woodworker. Who influenced you to do woodworking? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Other key part of this is this little 1/2 inch by 1.25 inches, I call it a little heel, the heel part of the push stick. And you'll see why later, but it's really important that your push sticks have that little heel part. So the next step, you have a couple options. One, you can take our little paper template and you can put it directly on the wood. For our wood, I have a piece of scrap Baltic birch that is stained black. I had made some black drawers in a previous video, and you could put that directly on and get to it. But what I want to do is I want to make a template that will last longer, and so this is a piece of hardboard, or 1/4 inch MDF is also what you could call it. And I'm gonna put this paper template on this and cut it out so I have something that I can go back to and use multiple times to make it really quick. So our next step is we're gonna glue this to this board. Just using some spray adhesive to glue the paper template to the hardboard. Next step, we're gonna cut out our template and we're gonna use a jigsaw with a fine blade. It's gonna be a little chaotic, bump around, but we don't need it to be precise. We just need to get roughed around and then we can clean it up with a sander. And so you see as I'm cutting, I'm trying to keep the piece as close to the workbench as possible so there's not that much hanging off. The more you have hanging off, the more it's gonna flop around. And so I definitely don't want to cut into my workbench, but I'd rather cut into my workbench than my fingers. We have to cut pilot holes for the handle of our push stick, and we're gonna do that with a Forstner bit. This is a 7/8 inch Forstner bit, and that's just enough for me to be able to get my fingers in there, but not be too tight or too loose. And to be honest, I'm probably gonna have to test it once I cut those holes and see if that makes sense for me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark kind of the center line where I want this to go. So I'm just kind of marking, I'm pushing down, it leaves a little dot where I'm gonna make the drill. I'm using this as a backer for when I drill. That way the drill bit doesn't blow through and do lots of tear out. Moving on to the next. I have to cut this inside part of the handle, and there's a lot of material hanging off the workbench. So I clamp the inside and I'm gonna brace with my hand as I cut. It's a little tight with my middle knuckle, so I'm gonna sand some of that out. Just as a reminder, everything that I've done to this point, you could already be doing to the piece of wood that you have. I, again, just want to have a template that I can go back to every time I need a new push stick that I can store away. We're going to attach our template to our piece of wood using double stick tape. Now we can rough cut it out with the jigsaw again if we want. We could also use a bandsaw. First, I want to cut off the excess on the miter saw so I can keep this scrap for another project. So I'm not worried about keeping it super close to the template. We're gonna cut that close in a bit. I put a flush trim bit on my router to use on the template. What I need to do is line the bearing up with my template. We have our push stick roughed out. Next, I'm gonna mark out where I want the handle to go, and then we're gonna pull the template off and drill for the handle. There you go. Just like on the template, I'm gonna mark where I want my hole to be by pressing the bit into the material. See, it leaves a little mark. Next, we're gonna cut out the rest of our handle on the line that we drew. I'm just gonna do a little fine tuning of the handle. You don't have to do this, it's really up to you. There's a couple little rough spots that I just wanna clean up. Everything's looking really good. Hand fits in nice. What I wanna do next is put a quick roundover on it just for comfort, and then do some sanding on the top and the edges, and then we'll be ready to test it out. So I have a 1/4 inch roundover bit on here, so when I grab it, it doesn't feel sharp edges. Good old belly rub is how you finish shop tools. Good to go. I think it looks great. The black with the plywood color, it really fits my style in the shop. There's some scratches, but that was there before. So there's nothing left to do than to try it.
The heel of the push stick pushes the wood through.
So in our next tool we're gonna make, it's gonna be a mallet. I made this mallet when I first started out woodworking. It's not terrible, but I didn't really understand how to make it. And so this top part of the mallet slides around. And so I got to make a new one. I could use the second one anyways, and I want to make it just slightly different. The sizes of each piece of wood, the walnut is roughly 6 inches wide by 3 7/8 tall. The hard maple is 13 inches wide by 6 inches tall. Our spalted maple is 23 inches long by 1 7/8 inches wide. I need to measure 2 1/4 inches by 2 pieces on the hard maple. Next step, gotta cut this piece out on the miter saw. I'm rough cutting the second piece. It does not need to be perfect right now. I just need to get it close. We have our 2 pieces. We need to rip this down to thickness and width. So we cut down our thickness to 3/4 inch. Next, we're gonna cut the width down to 1.5 inches. Then I'm gonna set my blade height to just above the material. Okay, so we have our pieces roughed out, and I want to do a little pre-shaping of the handle. And so I just need to kind of lay out roughly where everything's gonna be. And then I'm just gonna make some marks on my handle piece. So I drew a line 4.5 inches from the top, and then I'm gonna do 1 inch from the bottom. And these are gonna be our lines for where we use the router. I'm gonna throw a piece of double stick tape down just to hold my piece to the workbench. I can do it many different ways, but this is one of my ways to do it. So if you see the router has a line, I'm gonna take that line to where my line is, and that's where I know where to stop. Got a nice smooth transition here. I gotta flip it over and I gotta do the same measurements. Next, glue up. We have all of our pieces cut the rough size, and now it's time for the glue up. I'm using Titebond Thick and Quick for speed. I'm using squeeze clamps and F-style clamps for this. The squeeze clamps are just initially to hold things together, and then once I have it together, I'll replace them with the F clamps. Our glue is all cured. Time to take her out of the clamps. Pretty good. It's rough size, so now we gotta cut it down to our actual size. First, I'm gonna sand the top flat. I'm gonna cut the sides square with the top that I just sanded flat. Make sure to clamp your work so it's tight, because this is a little bit of an awkward angle for the miter saw. Really nice. There we go. So we got everything kind of squared up and even, and now we have to cut a little bit of an angle on each side of the mallet. There's a debate on how to cut an angle, what's the right angle. It's usually between 3 and 5 degrees. Next, we're gonna cut the taper on the head of the mallet. Roughly what we're looking at. You just saw me draw the lines, my 4-degree lines on the mallet. You don't have to do that. You can actually just set your degrees on your miter saw. I just like to have a rough idea of what it's gonna look like before I cut it to make sure that's what I want. But you can skip that step and go right to here. So we have our angles cut. So before we sand, we need to put a roundover on the edges of the mallet. And why we do that is when you hit things with a sharp edge, it'll want to splinter the wood off. And so we need to round those over. So if you whack it at an off angle, it might dent them out a little bit, but it won't splinter it and chip it or rip it. Next up, we have to sand. I'm only going to be sanding it to 120 grit, but we're going to go ahead and start with 80. Before we finish is we have to blow off all the sawdust. You can also use a vacuum or wipe it off. Next is finishing. For that, I'm gonna use something simple, Total Boat Wood Honey. It's a food safe wood finish. Not that it matters, but it's super easy to put on, dries fast. And I'm just gonna use a white Scotch-Brite, a small one, just to wipe it on, and then I'll wipe the excess off and it'll be ready to go. That's it. 2 tools you can make as a beginner woodworker. We have a push stick for your table saw and a few other things, and a wooden mallet you can use for multiple things. These are really fun to make and not that hard, and you don't need too many tools. I hope you learned something today. If you did, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Take care.